Relationship with the U.S. is over, and he vows to retaliate.
Our response to these latest tariffs is to fight.
Canada stares down a 25% U.S. auto tariff.
We were a little bit nervous. We were anxious. Now we're sick of being antagonized.
Now a signal from a Trump advisor: some Canadian vehicles may be exempt. Campaigns forced to switch gears.
My message to President Trump is knock it off.
We are all united in fighting back against Donald Trump.
Do their messages meet the moment? At issues here.
Canada, a long-standing energy ally, has abruptly shut down a $13 billion oil export pipeline to the United States, catching Washington off guard. With immediate effect, Canada has halted the supply of oil and gas, sparking an energy crisis that is sending shockwaves across America. As the largest energy supplier to the U.S., Canada's decision has triggered a sharp spike in fuel, electricity, and gas prices, causing massive disruptions in daily life for millions of Americans. From transportation to manufacturing, nearly every sector is feeling the impact. The aviation industry is battling soaring fuel costs, while supply chains, public services, and food systems are under pressure. But what led to this drastic decision? For years, the U.S. imposed steep trade tariffs on Canadian goods, assuming its northern neighbor would never retaliate. But that assumption has now crumbled. Canada had long warned that continued economic pressure would provoke a response. Washington didn't listen. In a decisive shift, Canada not only ceased energy exports to the U.S., but also signed multi-decade supply agreements with China and India, two of the world's largest energy markets. This isn't just a political statement. It's a strategic realignment. Canada is actively reducing its dependency on the U.S. while expanding its global influence in the energy sector. With America suddenly cut off from Canadian energy, other global powers are stepping in. Europe, eager to replace its Russian energy supplies, and Asia, in need of stable energy for growing economies, are filling the void. Canada has already inked billion-dollar deals to supply oil, gas, and electricity to nations across both continents. Canada's infrastructure, ports and pipelines once focused on North America, has begun rerouting to Asia and Europe. The result, a dramatic shift in the global energy landscape, with the U.S. losing not just supply, but also strategic leverage. States like New York, California, and Michigan, once heavily reliant on Canadian hydroelectric power, are now facing potential blackouts as electricity prices soar. Energy-intensive industries such as steel, automobile, and food processing are slashing production, endangering tens of thousands of jobs and forcing businesses to shut down some operations altogether. As the U.S. grapples with this energy shock, families and companies are hit with skyrocketing prices. From gas pumps to grocery stores, everything costs more. The systems that once relied on Canadian support are now destabilized. The federal government's efforts to respond seem ineffective against the scale of the disruption.
Wiping out $4 trillion in market value from the S&P 500.
The S&P 500 had its biggest one-day drop.
The chance of recession is higher than most people believe.
Many experts believe the U.S. could enter a recession this year.
America now faces more than an energy shortage. It faces a full-blown economic crisis. Over $700 billion in trade and more than 100,000 jobs are now at risk. Canada's decision is reverberating far beyond oil and gas. For decades, the U.S. and Canada enjoyed a robust and stable trade relationship. With over $700 billion in annual trade, millions of jobs, investments, and travel arrangements depended on this cross-border partnership. But now it's fracturing, not due to financial collapse or natural disaster, but due to something far deeper, a rising sense of betrayal and resentment.
Katie Simpson joins us from Washington now. So, Katie, I guess we're a little over a week away from even more tariffs.
It's expected to be another blow to the Canadian economy. Reciprocal tariffs targeting all U.S. trading partners, including Canada, set for April 2nd. It could be a moment of vulnerability. In the past, when Canada's faced a Trump trade threat, the Trudeau government gathered a senior team, threw all of them at it. That was the case for NAFTA negotiations and the recent tariff threats. But this moment is different. The Canadian government is in caretaker mode, and there are no signs the Trump administration cares.
Yeah, Katie, and now there are questions about Alberta Premier Danielle Smith apparently asking the Trump administration to pause tariffs for the Canadian election, noting the Liberal turnaround in the polls.
Those comments to an American right-wing media outlet 2 weeks ago will prompt scrutiny should Trump or anyone else in his administration weigh in further. Trump distanced himself last week from the Conservatives, saying he'd rather work with a Liberal.
And of course, I think we're all going to be watching to see if the president has anything else to say as he also continues his push for expansionism.
Yeah, and now he's making comparisons between Canada and Ukraine. When complaining about Canada and trade negotiations, he used the expression, "some people don't have the cards," which is what he said to the Ukrainian president in that tense Oval Office meeting. Now, Trump does not seem to be making a joke, and he's not doing it to needle Justin Trudeau because, of course, Trudeau is now gone. This week, keep an eye on Trump and Greenland. After declaring the U.S. must take control of the Danish territory, Trump is sending a high-level delegation there, including the National Security Advisor and the Second Lady. If Trump is seen to be aggressively pursuing an expansionist agenda, it's only going to make people more concerned in Canada.
What began as quiet divestment by individual Canadian investors has grown into a national movement. Small businesses are sourcing from Europe and Asia. Major retailers are reducing their reliance on U.S. goods. Even local governments are favoring non-U.S. partners. Some Canadian companies have gone so far as to say they have no intentions of returning to the U.S. market anytime soon. This isn't a momentary reaction, it's a systematic economic shift. Tourist hotspots in states like Florida, Arizona, and Nevada are already feeling the effects. Canadian tourists are pulling back, real estate is being liquidated, and hotel bookings are down. According to U.S. travel analysts, if just 10% of Canadian visitors reduce their spending, over 100,000 U.S. jobs could be jeopardized. This movement isn't driven purely by economics. It's rooted in identity. Many Canadians see it as a stand to protect national dignity. Their response has been calm but powerful. No angry protests, just strategic withdrawal from spending, investing, and traveling to the United States. At the same time, Canada is forging ahead with new alliances. Through agreements like CETA with the European Union and the CPTPP with Asia-Pacific nations, it has eliminated nearly all tariffs with partners like Japan, Australia, and Vietnam. Talks are underway to further strengthen trade with Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. Canadian companies are also adjusting supply chains, moving manufacturing and logistics away from U.S. reliance, aiming for long-term economic independence. In this shift, U.S. industries like agriculture, real estate, tourism, and services are losing ground. Small businesses are bleeding customers. Supply chains are disrupted. Jobs are disappearing. Meanwhile, Canada stands to emerge stronger, more diversified, and more globally connected than ever before. Will the U.S. pivot to rebuild this relationship, or will it dig in deeper, risking further economic fallout? Will other nations take note and follow Canada's lead, diversifying away from U.S. markets in favor of a more balanced global approach? Because this isn't just a spat between neighbors. It's a signal that the global economic order is shifting, and for the first time in decades, the United States is not in control. Canada held a general election at breakneck speed, an event now seen as one of the most urgent political shifts in the nation's modern history. The newly elected Prime Minister, Mark Carney, wasted no time. We've abolished the carbon tax for consumers, small businesses, and farmers to end the division it created. Because united, we are stronger. Carney also rolled back the controversial hike on capital gains tax to encourage risk-taking and growth in housing and development. Carney, now the face of the Liberal Party, made Canada's stance crystal clear. Canada will never in any form be absorbed into America. His political rivals echoed that message. Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party and often compared to Trump, dismissed annexation rumors as ridiculous and insulting. He instead focused on economic revival through spending cuts and boosting local industries. Jagmeet Singh of the New Democratic Party took an even bolder route, calling for Donald Trump to be banned from attending the G7 in Alberta and urging a suspension of strategic mineral exports that fuel U.S. tech and defense industries. Across the country, Canadians began to speak not just with their words, but with their actions. At concerts, festivals, and sports games, the U.S. national anthem was booed and the American flag turned away. It wasn't just about symbols, it was a grassroots declaration that Canada would no longer accept a subordinate role in North America. And if the U.S. wants a closer partnership, perhaps respect, not coercion, must lead the way. Meanwhile, in a break from tradition, Prime Minister Carney made his first diplomatic tour not to Washington, but to Europe. He was warmly welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron and then held talks in London, signaling a clear redirection in foreign policy priorities. Upon returning home, Carney made a bold announcement. Canada would begin fortifying its sovereignty without depending on the United States. In a historic move, Canada signed a $6.5 billion military deal with Australia to deploy an advanced over-the-horizon radar system, giving early warning coverage from the southern border to the Arctic Circle. The partnership sends a clear message. Canada is prepared to defend its territory and interests independently. For decades, the Arctic was a region of strategic interest for the U.S. Now, Canada is asserting full control, without assistance from the Trump administration, and Carney made it clear, Canada will keep building partnerships, not just with Australia, but also with France, the EU, and other strategic allies. In the city of Moga, all public U.S. flags were replaced by larger Canadian ones. One man and his followers are disrupting markets and undermining a relationship that took decades to build. We will not sit idle. This wasn't just about optics, it was about asserting sovereignty. Across Canada, people were rallying behind a shared cause, to defend their economic future from foreign interference.
ABC's Lana Moise reports on Canadians changing their plans.
Like a good neighbor, Canada has seemingly always been there for the U.S. tourism industry, but this year is different.
I was planning a trip to LA to see a friend. However, we decided to go to Mexico instead.
A new survey warns 30% of Canadians who had trips to the U.S. planned have now canceled them as tensions rise between the two countries. From the dispute over tariffs triggering boos for the American anthem, President Trump's talk of making Canada the 51st state. Canadians are vowing to make their voices heard.
It's Canada strong. We can stand up for ourselves. We've called out those comments. They're disrespectful.
The repercussions are already visible. U.S. companies report plummeting revenues in Canada, with U.S. tourism facing an 85% drop in Canadian visitors. Canadian consumers are boycotting American brands, choosing homegrown products instead. Fast food chain A&W Canada is thriving, while McDonald's and other U.S. giants are losing ground. The message is clear, Canadians are proud and they are choosing economic independence. This isn't just a trade spat, it's a global power shift. Canada's rich mineral reserves and energy supplies make it a pivotal player in shaping the new economic order. If these tensions continue, the ripple effects will go far beyond North America. The U.S. economy, global alliances, and strategic influence are all on the line. The choices made now, by Canada, by the US, by Europe, could redefine how global power is distributed for years to come. Don't look away. This standoff is just beginning. Subscribe to stay informed as we explore where these developments are heading next, and what they mean for the world economy.